How's your Mandarin? Well, I don't speak it. Hey, well, thanks. I like the initiative. Call me if you ever have any other ideas.
Hey, welcome to You're the Boss podcast show. And today I have Brian Samson with me, and he is the founder of Plugg, a Latin American nearshoring staffing company. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
I am honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. So, Brian, just explain really who you are and what you do, first of all.
Sure. So I'm the founder of Plug. I've been in the space of connecting talent from Latin America to US companies for the last 10 years. So it's really something that I've been very passionate about and plan to spend the next decade plus of my life doing that as well. And I live in Hawaii, but a lot of my focus is on uh, clients in the mainland US and connecting them with candidates all throughout Latin America.
Right. Okay. That's great. That's very clear. Okay. So, Brian, tell me just first of all, before we get into the whole aspect of hiring people and nearshoring and offshoring, that kind of stuff. So, just tell me first how you got started, because I know Plug isn't the start of your journey.
Yeah, yeah,
Just walk me through your whole history there.
yeah, sure. So when I grew up, which was in the Midwest in Chicago, not as tropical as Hawaii, and I will say that I didn't really know any entrepreneurs. It just wasn't part of my world. My mom was a homemaker. I have two younger brothers, so house full of boys, a lot of craziness and jumping off the furniture. And then my dad worked for the same manufacturing company, basically his whole life.
Hmm.
And then uncles, neighbors, it was all, people that worked at companies. So I didn't know what it really meant to be an entrepreneur. As I graduated undergrad, kind of did the traditional, worked for a company in Chicago. And then I moved to California. And that's where things started to shift. I didn't take the jump right away, but I got immersed in this whole world. And it wasn't like now having been an entrepreneur for 10 years, everything I look at, I know there's a business behind it. For
Mm,
example, I've got this little lid for a jar and
yeah.
there's a company that makes this and there's somebody that, or this pen, there's somebody that started a
That's
pen.
funny. It's funny you should say that because that's the same realization I had when I was doing my copywriting business. I'd go and interview companies to find out what they did so I could write about it. So one time I went to a precision manufacturing company here in Singapore, and all they did was create the molds for the screw the screw part of plastic bottles, like Coke
Yeah.
bottles and stuff. That was it. And it's like, and I've never looked at a plastic bottle the same way since.
Yeah. And
I
it's
mean, you
created
realize, there's
created
money
jobs
behind
and
it.
careers and yeah, it's amazing. Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
amazing, yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like small business, I think different, just as we talked about and services and trades and plumbers and electricians and all that. But San Francisco's just a place like no other where, and the time I was there, it was software startups. Now it's all about AI. The
Mm,
time
mm,
I was
mm.
there, it's software as a service, all these like SaaS web
Yeah.
apps, mobile apps, just a really cool time to be there. Tens of thousands just everywhere you go. There's literally these little startups. But then you also have the inspiration because
Mm,
Google's there and Facebook's there, Oracle's there, and Salesforce.com and Twitter and everybody's there, so you could see your future, if you really worked hard and caught the right wave and, you were good and lucky.
mm,
So I was not an entrepreneur there, but
mm.
worked in a bunch of these tech startups.
Right.
And your audience may or may not know there's a chronological order or sequence between funding and size. So Series A, B, C, D. So
Mm,
C and A are smaller. And then, the further down the alphabet you go, generally the more money they have, the bigger, and it's more about scale. So I tended to work in the earlier part, which was also impactful because I was making a bigger impact,
Mhm.
and I was also working really close with the founders.
Mm.
And that's not something you often get if you join a late stage company because
Mm.
founder doesn't know who you are. There's 500 people. Maybe they wave at you in an elevator or something, but you know, you're there. The business has been figured out. You're really there to scale.
Yeah.
I was part of that figuring the business out all the time,
Mm.
I happen to run the talent function, which tended to cover a lot of random things like office space and some of the IT, not the software development, but, like making
The
sure
actual running of the business.
everyone had computers and the internet worked and then we had, HR and all that. But really where all my energy was focused on was talent acquisition because, you live or die by the talent you're able to recruit as an
Mm.
early
Mm.
stage company.
Mm.
So they would raise capital, and then all of a sudden it was up to me to use that judiciously to find the right
Mm.
people.
Mm.
And I worked really closely with the founders and like, what's the right person and let's define our culture. And it was really cool. I will say, and I think your audience will resonate with this, is not only did I not know any entrepreneurs when I was growing up, but I also went to a school that I don't think was like that impressive, not on anybody's radar, a place called Southern Illinois University, which I'm proud to have attended because I think it shaped me. But, when I got to San Francisco and it seemed like everybody's from Stanford or
Not
Harvard or
good.
prestigious school, no one knew where I went to. So I
Yeah.
had this imposter syndrome, this kind of chip on my shoulder. I've got to prove them wrong.
Mm.
That tended to feed me though. Like I think I need to always have a little little chip on my shoulder,
A
something that
reason to carry
yeah,
on.
I need to kind of feel like the underdog in the story. But anyway, fast forward about 5 years in San Francisco, finally got a little confidence and I wasn't totally ready to be a founder yet. And kind of a funny story, I think we talked a little bit yesterday, is I was really intrigued at the time. This is like maybe 2014, really intrigued by the possibility of being an expat in a hot, cool place in Asia. And you happen to live in one of the places that I'd circled,
Yeah.
Singapore. I was also thinking about Shanghai, just like an expat hub. Asia was where the excitement was. Didn't have kids yet. How could I just have this adventure? So I did grad school, a program that I thought was just fantastic for my development. UCLA in California and NUS, National University of Singapore, have a joint program. It's all about executives that want to do their MBA and have a more Asia focus. So when I did it 10 years ago, can't believe I graduated 10 years ago, I did that with the purpose of this is my ticket to being an expat in Asia and using Skype to kind of cold call random companies in Singapore and, hey, I'm Brian from San Francisco. You want to sponsor me? People are like, I don't understand. So, and I realize, I'm not an engineer. It's a little bit of a harder thing to sell that I can be your head of talent, but also Singapore has a lot going for it, a lot. But it's also not San Francisco. It's not loaded with tens of thousands of startups that all have, $10 million or more in
Mm.
capital to spend on talent. It's a smaller place. It's often a gateway to the rest of Asia. So you're not hiring a team of 200 engineers in Singapore
Mm.
usually.
Mm. Mm.
So, so anyway, this led me to a interesting phone call. I connected to somebody in Shanghai who was a very successful CEO
Mhm.
running a business out there and kind of knew of him and took the initiative, reached out and, I would love to be your head of talent. Well, interesting. How's your Mandarin? Well, I don't speak it. Hey, well, thanks. I like the initiative. Call me if you ever have any other ideas. So, I didn't take that as a rejection. I took that as an opportunity. And I thought about it for a month or two, and I'm still in the program and I'm still working at this tech startup. And I saw this pattern where in San Francisco, there were fintechs everywhere.
Mm,
They all had lots of money, run by usually finance people that had a tech idea, good product vision, and totally, I was going to say agnostic, but really apathetic towards the technology, like, so what if, I could create probably more of a service business, but servicing these tech companies and build their initial, prototypes and minimum viable products. Took that to that guy in Shanghai, and he liked it. And then I tinkered, learn how to put together a pretty robust pitch deck
mhm,
and return on capital plan and staffing plan and gross margins and everything that you want to see, go to market plan, and somehow pulled it off. And he agreed to invest $2 million.
mhm.
And that seemed like it might as well have been $2 billion to me, from where I grew up. And then I thought, okay, so $2 million, this is exciting. Where should I build this company? Because I don't think it's gonna last as long as I thought in San Francisco. So I remembered that a couple years prior, I had done a little solo backpacking trip staying in hostels in
Mhm,
a couple places in Latin America, and one of those was, Buenos Aires.
mhm,
And if you've never been, Buenos Aires is a mega city way, way down, far down south.
mm.
It is, I think there's like 14 million people in the general area. It's not as big as, say, Jakarta, but it's big and bustling. There is one area that's kind of modern skyscrapers, but mostly it's like it looks like Paris 50 years ago,
Okay.
just tree-lined streets,
Oh,
old
nice.
Parisian architecture, cafes everywhere. I think I've described it as like the most first world of the third world.
Mhm.
Meaning it's almost like a teenager, like, one day it feels like an adult, the next day it's like a kid. So, because the government there is so crazy and volatile, and it's nowhere near like Singapore, where you can launch a business in 4 hours and it's black and white and no corruption. Argentina is the polar opposite of everything I just said, but I just remember, there's really interesting talent, and my dollar would go really far there, and people spoke pretty good English, and then they're also on the same time zone, generally speaking, with the States.
Okay.
So, let's do it, and then I decided to, go all in, and instead of trying to run this remotely from San Francisco, I moved to Argentina and
Okay.
built the business there, and I could probably go on, but, that might be a good stopping place if you had a follow-up.
Okay, so before we get on to that, so I think what you said earlier about not having any experience whatsoever in business, right? When you were growing up and you didn't know anybody and that ran a business, right? Your parents had full-time jobs and stuff like that, right? And came from the same place. I was exactly the same. I never intended to start a business. That was not something on the radar, not something I ever thought I could do. I had no model to go on for that at all. But like you, moving to a different place and seeing things from a different perspective changed my mind. So coming to Singapore was for me that eye opener of, oh, you can run a business. And so for you, it was San Francisco, right? And I just love the fact that you were working in companies where you saw it from the start and you're working with the founders. So it's, you're seeing firsthand what it takes to start a business. So that is the education in itself. That is absolute gold, right? So you I think you're really lucky there that you could take all that information and then build your own business as well. So where did Hawaii come into it?
Hawaii is just random. I did the expat thing in Argentina for just about a year.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I had been married for 2.5 years by then. So she
Mm,
was with me in this whole expat journey.
mm,
We had long gotten rid of our San Francisco apartment. We're staying in apartments and kind of popping around, Argentina very,
mhm,
very flexibly. Let's try this neighborhood for this month. Let's try this neighborhood for this month. So we really just were living out of we each had a big suitcase, and
mm,
no real commitment to
mm.
any place in the world, which is kind of exhilarating. And I may suggest people try it if they can, to for like once in your life be kind of intentionally homeless. Uh, and then but Hawaii's pretty nice, and it's actually I think it's the least American of all the 50 states.
Right.
Huge Asian influence. It's way far away from the mainland. So we could almost kind of feel like we weren't totally back in like all the way into the States.
Mhm.
We have a beautiful quality of life, perfect weather, and just kind of an easy life is hard enough. So if we could live somewhere great, it made it a little bit more tolerable.
Nice, nice. Okay, so let's talk a little bit now about excuse me. Take a drink. Hold on. My voice has gone. Talk. Okay, to edit this bit out. Frog in my throat. Okay. All right. So let's talk a little bit about people that are starting up a business and they're trying to recruit, right? And find the right people. As you mentioned earlier, getting the right people to work in your company is critical. So what's the benefit of nearshoring? And especially in Latin America, what's the benefit to a company that's just starting up? Why should
Yeah,
they do
sure.
that rather than the other way around?
Yeah, so I think there's kind of like maybe like call it four stages, in terms of like a hiring cycle. Stage one, it's just the founder or founders plural, right? And they're doing everything. And then you bring on your first couple team members that are, maybe even like executive potential. I think it's important to co-locate. So as much as you'll hear me be the biggest ambassador ever for nearshoring, I think for successful companies, you should have your early people all together because can you go far?
Right.
There's
Okay.
just so much context, banter, and decisions and
Mm,
things that happen, in conversations in the room.
right.
But there's something interesting that's happening with the funding market, and I'm going to talk about the tech market.
Mm,
There's a lot of businesses that aren't raising venture capital that are also great nearshore potential.
mm,
So if you're a tech company, you have seen the greatest funding boom ever in 2021, 2022. It seemed like you could put your hat out and a $10 million check would just go boom
okay.
in the hat, right? You could just raise money like nothing because no one cared about investors didn't care about valuations. They just wanted in. Right? There was a lot less due diligence, frenzy. It's the tulip market, all over.
Mm, mm,
Investors have been extremely tight if you're not doing an AI venture. So everything else is excruciatingly hard to raise capital.
mm,
And the reason you raise capital, if you're a tech company, so they can fund your losses until you can be profitable.
mhm,
So if you're And in a typical fundraising cycle, every 18 months is when you raise more money.
Mhm.
What happens if that 18 months stretches to 3 years or 4 years, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden you gotta lay people off, you can't hire, it's, nail biting.
Yeah.
Nearshoring is significantly less expensive
Mhm.
than hiring people in the States. So this allows you to keep the momentum going in your business, continue to hire, continue to make progress. And you can do this with a fraction of the spend you normally spend, say in San Francisco or New York, which are the top two startup cities in the world. And those are expensive places. But then you also get the benefit of same time zone. So you're not sending an email as you close off the day and shut your laptop down. And then all of a sudden you come in the next day, they totally missed what I was trying to write, or
So it's a
I
day
don't think
lost.
ahead, or and then you're just in this feedback cycle, and something that could have been done collaboratively in an hour or two takes a whole week because you're just back and forth over
Right.
email or Slack. Or somebody's making a big sacrifice. They're doing calls at 3 a.m., or
Mm.
your offshore team is sacrificing their life and they're awake at 3 a.m. to accommodate
Mm.
you in the
Mm.
States.
Mm. Yeah.
So with North Shore, everyone's awake when the sun's up. It's
Mhm.
those natural circadian rhythms.
Right.
You have a question on a Zoom right away, or Slack, or WhatsApp. It's super synchronous. The talent in Latin America is really interesting because not only is the cost and the time zone advantageous, but I alluded to this earlier. It's a volatile place. It's more developing than developed, right? And I think Singapore recognizes this as an ultra developed place surrounded by a lot of developing countries.
Mm. Yeah.
So in Latin America, there's corruption, there's chaos, there's high inflation, but if you look at that and you blame the population, you've unfairly put the blame on the population. It's actually just poor leadership.
Mm.
The population is a positive byproduct of that
Right.
because they've been battle tested their whole life.
Mm.
They've had to figure out crazy situations and find workarounds. They've been in problem solving mode their whole life. Chaos is something they shrug their shoulders at. They're calm because they see it all the time. And developed countries, I think, don't understand that they're on the losing end of that, because if you live in a highly developed, comfortable country,
Mm.
kind of lose a little bit of your grit and
Yeah.
scrappiness and
Yeah.
edge. So
Yes, I agree.
so I think the talent there, a high English fluency, same time zone, fraction of the price, battle tested, problem solvers, humble, hungry. So these are the types of people you need in
Mm.
that early to mid stage part of growing your business.
Mm.
And then the other cool thing is when you get to that final maturity stage and you need to build out bigger teams,
Mhm.
you need leaders. And there's some really amazing leaders there where they can run teams and think through dashboards and strategy, and they don't need a script. They don't need this 18-step process that you've given them. They can figure it out as it goes, and they're good with ambiguity,
Right.
and they know how to lead their team and their culture. So big list. I'm a huge ambassador for it, and I think that's why a lot of US companies are either jumping in with 2 feet, or they will be jumping in with 2 feet to Latin America.
Right. Nice. So the companies that you serve are typically what kind of companies?
Yeah, small to medium-sized businesses are really our sweet spot, but pretty diverse customer bases. It could be tech companies, it could be agencies, like a marketing agency or financial services agency or something like that, and it could be a scaling company. It doesn't have to be tech, but we certainly work with a lot of tech companies, but it could be manufacturing, could be a bank. They're just looking for what I'd say labor arbitrage, where they can get a senior person for what a junior person would cost in their city.
Right.
So they get
Right.
this exciting gap.
Nice. And then what type of positions are you filling?
Yeah. So nearshore is following the lead of offshore. And
So what's the difference between
yeah,
them?
yeah, sure. So offshore just means there's a ocean in the middle, which if you're in the States, it means that, India was a primary offshore partner.
Right.
Philippines are kinda like the call center of the world. India is, kind of the software engineers for the world.
Uh,
China's the manufacturer of the world,
yeah.
that's how I think the US-centric view of offshoring looks like.
Right.
But let's say you're in Australia, you might offshore to Latin America, but
Mm,
stay nearshore to the Philippines, because it's really about
mm.
time zone,
Okay.
time management.
Right.
And then to your question about roles, offshores became mature through software and
Mm,
IT.
mm.
That's usually the first thing that is offshored, and that's the most common thing that's nearshored.
Okay. But then you mentioned like marketing agencies and things like banks and things like that, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
are you like having designers?
yeah,
What kind of roles?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So let me uh maybe be more inclusive with my language. I think that was a good prompt. Is no one's really nearshoring for junior roles because it kind of eliminates the arbitrage. You want a senior person at a junior price.
Mm, mm.
So people are looking for mid to senior level,
Right.
but probably not executives. But there's a
Mm,
lot of road in between,
mhm.
mid-level contributors all the way up to second line managers and
Mm,
leaders. So anything in there
mhm.
is nearshore eligible. Marketers, accountants, finance people, call center, back office operations, IT, software developers. Almost anything that you would hire locally, you can hire in Latin America.
Right. So looking at the companies that you've served, what how can I what changes have happened to those companies because they've decided to nearshore?
Yeah. So, I'll say the first thing is many were tentative. And I think part of that is reputation based. So Latin America, if you were to, I don't know what Singapore gets on Netflix, but what the States get on Netflix is Narcos and cartel shows
Okay. Yeah.
and you start to wonder like, what is going on in Latin America? Do I really want to, hire down there? I'm kind of going tentative but I'm so passionate and okay, okay, Brian, we'll try one. But one leads to 5 to 10 to 20 to 40. These are companies that are all over the map. And I think um, they're just blown away because there's long been this kind of reputational, um, poor, poorly aligned reputation of the creative work gets done in the States,
Mm,
and the mundane process stuff can get done overseas, right? Or near shore. But people are really blown away. Companies are really blown away. Hiring managers are blown away by so much critical thinking and creative work that can be done in
right.
Latin America. And that's allowed them to crush a lot of their performance goals and company goals and do it with a fraction of the labor spend that they're used to.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Nice, nice. So because these people are working remotely, right? They're not actually physically in the US offices, right? What What advice would you give for companies if they're thinking of doing this? How do they set up systems to make it a success? Because it can be a nightmare to communicate things remotely, right? How do they manage that?
Yeah, sure. So if there's anybody listening who is maybe at like a really, really early stage place in their business, there is no shame in a DIY, do it yourself approach. There are some great platforms out there that everybody knows, Fiverr, Upwork, there's others. I don't think you're going to get the greatest talent, but you're going to get a chance to practice
Mhm.
how to hire people that are in a different country than you. And it's easy to do. And they worry about all the taxes and the vetting. And you can pick if, a five-star worker who's done 1,000 projects or whatever, right? You
Uh,
can do all that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
You set the budget. But I think once you've reached a point where maybe you're looking for your fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth person,
Mm,
but you got some more cash or a little bit more on the traction scale, I would look at recruiting agencies
mm,
like Plug, but there's other companies out there as well. Find the one that aligns best with you,
yeah.
and and then you're really leaning into their network because they know they're
Mm,
interacting with a lot of these companies. We have recruiting staff in Latin America, and they've been there forever. We have a really strong credibility there, which matters in Latin America. People trust us, pay early.
mm,
We always pay on time if we're not early. We take care of our people. So that matters and allows us to access, a lot of talent that maybe others can't. And then I'll say that in terms of like the setup, a company like ours, US entity, so a US customer doesn't have to worry about anything happening south of the border.
mm,
They're just, US contracts, US
mm,
banking, the way you do business in the US, and then they just kind of manage the person. I think that's where you're going with your question.
yeah.
All the standard stuff that you'd have, if you're a company that uses Slack, use Slack.
Mm,
If you're a company that uses Google Drive,
mm,
Riverside, or some of these new AI tools, equip them with the exact same things. And
right.
you'd be surprised how closely aligned they are culturally.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. So where can people find you if they're interested, if this has sparked, especially if they're based in the US, and this has
Yeah,
sparked an interest in thinking, okay, maybe I should try Latin America. Where can they find you?
sure. Plug, Plugg .tech, TECH. And I'll make one other plug, if you will. I happen to be an investor in a company that is Singapore registered, but growing rapidly in the Philippines,
Uh-huh.
called Talent Hero. And it's
Okay.
a similar company, but they focus on Asia,
Mhm.
on Latin America. So if there's listeners in Asia that are
Right.
curious, nearshoring in Asia, Latin America is kind of irrelevant for them. That's okay. I'd be happy to make an intro to them and Talent Hero.
Okay. So you're a partner in Talent Hero or an investor or
Investor,
an
investor.
investor? Okay. Nice. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, so right, thank you so much for coming on today. I'll put the link around where you're listening or watching this, and you'll be able to connect. I'll put both links up, right? So that people are able to connect whichever part of the world they are in, they can get their talent sourced. So, yeah, really, really a pleasure to talk to you all the way in Hawaii. You're so lucky. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the show today. And if you've liked what you've heard, then do subscribe to the channel wherever you see it, wherever you're watching it. And if you're on YouTube, ring the bell so that you can get notified when we upload another episode so you don't miss the episodes as they come up.